I'll second that.
Councillor McMillan, seconded. Open for discussion. Oh, sorry. We received the minutes. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Matters for decision. Number 6, recommendation to council there. Development contribution postponement request SCMT Holdings Limited.
I'll move.
Councillor Wilson moved.
Recommendation.
Councillor Falloon seconded. Open for debate. No debate. I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Item number 7 there is a recommendation development contribution postponement Shepherd/Spittal. Councillor Falloon, you moving?
Yes.
Seconder, Councillor Wilson. Open for debate. There being no debate, I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Number 9, recommendation there, carryover funding from 1920 year to 2021 year. Councillor Falloon.
Moved.
Moved.
I'll second that.
Councillor McMillan. Open for discussion, debate. There being none, I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Get carried. Item number 11. Move it a second to receive these minutes of the Town Centre Subcommittee. Councillor Cameron. Councillor Lovett. I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Councillor Mackay.
Mr Mayor, there's one subject in those minutes that have just been moved as a true and accurate record that the Town Centre Committee was drawn on, literally a dead heat. So I would like to test the feeling of council, if I may. So I move that council agree to the Christmas tree being moved to the checkerboard for Christmas 2020.
We've put a motion on the table that Councillor Mackay has moved. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Cameron seconding.
Yep.
Good. Open for discussion.
Quite simply, Mr Mayor and councillors, I believe that we should try and move what we can back into the centre of Ashburton or closer to the centre of Ashburton. I have checked it out without my tape measure, but there is room for the tree to go in there, and if staff can prove that there's not, I will take their opinion because they may have done better measurement than I have. They said they were going to have a look at the Town Centre Committee. I just think that we have to move as much activity into the centre of Ashburton as we can, and if it means that the activities around the Christmas tree also move and a road be closed, so be it. I'm testing the council.
Thank you for that. You put the motion on the table. I might go to Mr Rickaby and just give us an update as perhaps for why we should or why we shouldn't, reasons plus or minus, disadvantages.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you. I wasn't at the meeting, but this is a little bit of other information. Yes, you're absolutely dead right, Councillor Mackay, the tree will fit there. But before we put the tree there, we will have to get an engineer's report because we don't know what the what's underneath there, and it actually weighs quite a bit. So we've been asked by Michael Wong to get a engineer's report for what's underneath there to make sure that it doesn't collapse. But I think the most important issue that we've got is that if the eyesight is moved, then that'll be like a bomb site in there because they're going to remove the walkway down from the railway. All those seats come out, so it'll actually be basically fenced off as a construction zone. And the intention is, I think, at this stage that that eyesight is going to be out of there early December, if I'm not wrong. That's two new pieces of information that have come since your meeting.
I think they were requesting that it, someone was requesting that it didn't move until after Christmas in early January, so it didn't upset the Christmas shopping, but I could be corrected on that. Thanks for that, Bevan, and I'll go to councillors now. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. And through the chair, how long is the Christmas tree normally up? I know it's there for the light up the night, but does it stay in the square for sort of a month, 6 weeks?
Yeah, it does. It stays until I don't know the exact date, but it comes down in the new year.
Thank you.
Councillor Lovett?
I'd have to say I'm totally against it. We haven't got a budget to do it. And I think we have this every Friday night of December. We have a festival around the Christmas tree in the park. In the park, it is a relaxed setting in there for movies and our buskers evening, and it wouldn't be the same on the street. And I fully support leaving the tree right where it is. At least crowds can get round it, and it's making use of that square. And I will not be supporting it.
Councillor Latham?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree with Councillor Lovett. I think we're panicking. We know it works where it is. It's only 1 block, is it, further away? We haven't got it in the budget, and to delay it for 1 year is not going to be detrimental, so I will not be supporting the motion.
Councillor Cameron?
I will support the motion, or I will be supporting the motion. With regards, if I can just pick up on something said earlier, with regards to moving of the information centre building, I understand that was to be moved either prior to the end of November or post, 1st of January. So we'd like some assurances on that, if possible.
Yes, we're working with the
Yeah.
purchasers to try and fit that timetable. Originally, of course, they were asked to have the ISAP building removed by the end of December. So we're now working with them. My understanding is that they're looking to do it a little bit earlier, but that does leave then the issue that Mr Rickaby refers to, is that will be much more a construction site than a pleasant village green at the time of the light up the nights.
And if that's the case, then so be it. There will be a dearth of Christmas lighting and Christmas festivities in Ashburton this year because we're not able to put the banners across because of health and safety, the steel poles were removed. It would be nice to have some Christmas festivity in the town, some decoration or something other than the things going to be tied around the lamp posts. And I think if we are not able to move the Christmas tree because there's nowhere to put it if it comes into town because there's a big hole there, then we need something else in the town, and I would request some consideration of that.
Councillor Bevan?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what we're going to be able to do because we don't have a budget to do anything extra. But we have got agreement with 6 different ethnic groups to actually put in some really nice Christmas windows in those empty shops, so that'll brighten up that part of the world. But we can certainly consider what you're talking about.
Councillor Flood?
I support the intent of the motion, but at the Town Centre Subcommittee meeting, there was an option put up that we would not be doing anything about the Christmas tree until we had an officer's report on possible locations and that sort of thing. So by passing this motion as it currently stands, I think, agreeing with Councillor Latham, we are slightly panicking a bit, but because at the moment, if we move the tree, we do not have electrical connections to it, and so we've got costs such as this. So for the moment, as I say, I support the idea of moving the tree into the centre of town. I certainly agree with the closing of the streets between Havelock Street and Tancred Street, but to do it this close to Christmas to me is just not practical, and therefore I'll be voting against it.
Right to reply?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I find it quite interesting that there's no budget to move the tree. I presume there's a budget to move the tree from where it is now to where it's going to be put on the corner of Burn Square East. I suggested in my words after the move the motion that the festival could take place around where the tree is. Thank you for what's happening with the shops. It's a step in the right direction. Wish we'd known about it. And as for electricals, oh, Mr. Mayor, there's an awful lot of electrical stuff around there. There's some power poles with lights on, or light poles. There's an information centre with power in it. There's even a loo there with lights on it. So the electrical doesn't stack up, but I am adamant that I'm going to keep trying to brighten up the CBD of Ashburton, even if you stop me this time.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay, for your right to reply. I'm going to put your motion, I'm going to read it to you. That Council agree to the Christmas tree be moved to the checkerboard for the Christmas 2020. That is the motion. It's been moved by Councillor Mackay. It's been seconded by Councillor Cameron. We've had the debate. I'm now going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? No. Carried. Cool. Declaration. Do you want to show of hands? Names? All those for the motion, please. All those against the motion. And Wilson, Lovett, and Mia. That's right. So the motion was lost. Thank you. We now have Georgie McLeod has dropped in to see us, and Georgie is from the Waitaha Health Board, and probably councillors may remember council put 3 names forward as representatives for our district to go on the Waitaha Health Board, and Georgie was one of those. So there's 3 names went off to the District Health Board, I think it was, and they went to the Waitaha Health Board, and they selected Georgie to represent our district. So Georgie's going to come every so often and just give us an update on the happenings there. So welcome, Georgie. And if you just want to tell us what you've been doing at the board meetings for our district, that would be great. Thanks. I'll just push the red button. No, the other side.
Okay. Hi. You'll have to excuse me, I've got a very scratchy throat. All assured there's nothing sinister about it, but it is a bit scratchy. So just basically, I am here to introduce myself and to say, yeah, I'm the local rep on the Waitaha Primary Health Organisation Board. The board's made up of a combination of clinical and community representatives. So the other community reps are from the Huranui, from Waimakariri, and there's a vacant seat as well from the Christchurch Central. Basically, I'm really still finding my feet on the board, and I'm there as a rep for the Ashburton Territorial Local Authorities. So this is the first of what will probably be some kind of a regular kind of catch-up, or we could maybe do it a different way, whichever you guys find works best. But basically, I thought I could give a wee rundown the programs that are happening in Ashburton, which you're probably actually all well aware of them, but there's been additional staff employed to support the government's wellbeing model, including health improvement practitioners and health coaches, which I hear is going well. And the staff began work in early September, so that's actually only just started, which have been attached to practices on a prorated basis. The Youth with the Hype program is currently supporting the youth services and enhanced youth sexual health programs in Ashburton. And while we're currently aware actually that there's a number of practices who are currently actively recruiting GPs, which is good to see that they're actively recruiting, but you know, there's hope that we can find some great candidates for that. Touching briefly on COVID-19, the testing is being managed but at much reduced levels, which reflects the current levels that we're at the moment. Really, I guess my role is to work as a two-way conduit. I know you also have officials who do that on the official level as well, so happy to take questions back to the board to be answered, or anything else you'd like covered up there really. But sorry, it's a pretty brief update, but I was appointed early in the year, but because of COVID and stuff, only really started 5 or 6 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago. So yeah, just finding my feet really.
Thanks, Georgie, and yeah, you will be just finding your feet, being a new role and new board, getting to know them and getting to know our district's needs as well. So thanks for you'll be taking those back. Councillors, any questions for Georgie? Doesn't look like it. You must have explained it all very, very well. So thank you very much for your presentation. And
just ask a question.
sorry, Councillor McMillan.
Just how often are you meeting, and what are the concerns that are being raised at the moment across the Canterbury area?
So we meet once a month in person, and I'm also on the Financial and Risk Committee, so that meets an additional once a month via Zoom the week before the actual board meeting. I mean, the biggest concerns are probably the same kind of climate issues that everyone is aware of at the moment. You know, we're leading into an election. In the health sector in particular, there is the Health and Disabilities Review report, which kind of leaves the role and the function of PHOs a little bit in the air. And that tied with the election, I guess no one really knows exactly where that's going to land just yet. And I guess with COVID-19, that's been taking over a lot of the day-to-day business as usual kind of work. But I guess, you know, that's the broader context. And within that, we're trying to fit the strategy of the PHO to best meet the needs of, it's known as the Rural Canterbury Health, but it's really changed a bit now. You know, it is a much broader concept than just rural health. So it's sort of rural and then remote Canterbury. In terms of the issues that's changing demographics of people, it's really great that they've employed people like the Māori navigators to help with accessing whānau ora programs and things, which seems to be going really well. I think that in the broader context of election coming up and the Health and Disabilities Review is really where it heads at the moment.
Great, thanks for that. Any further questions of Georgie? No, well done. Thanks, Georgie. So we'll keep in touch and come back in 3-4 months' time and give us another wee update. That'll be great.
Yeah, I guess. Just one other thing I did have the bullet point down that I forgot to mention is that some other councils do have something similar to a health committee, and I just wonder if that's something that you've ever considered, or if you have an official who works in that area that perhaps I should make contact with on a regular basis. Maybe that's something to consider.
Okay, Hamish has listened to that, so we'll have a wee chat and see what we have or what our needs are and come back to you.
Yeah, sounds good.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Cool, thank you. Next item of business is item number 12, and Creative Communities Grants Assessment. Can I move in a second that we receive the minutes of that committee? Councillor Falloon, Councillor McMillan, all in favour please say aye. Aye. And there's a recommendation there that council, receives the minutes. I was ahead of myself. Item number 13, Methven Community Board. Move in a second, we receive the minutes.
I'll move those.
McMillan, Councillor Latham, all in favour please say aye. Aye. Carried. And there's no items in there for council decision. Item number 15. Perfect. Adoption of the Development and Financial Contributions Policy 2020. And we have Richard and Tony here. 36. Richard, floor's yours to... Oh, Angus, do you have a question or should we...
No, I was going to...
we'll go for questions first, if there's any points of clarification or any further to add, Richard, or it's a meaty report.
Thank you for that. The good news is that you're probably only a few minutes away from being able to not have to discuss development contributions for a few months. I didn't propose to talk at all about the first recommendation, because the first recommendation has already been the subject of hearings and deliberations, and the first recommendation is simply consistent with what you've previously decided. In regard to the two matters of additional information that were requested from deliberations, you'll see that we've looked at the matter of retirement villages and their consumption and whether they should have a discounted development contribution. And we have, officers have concluded that the figures that were presented by the Retirement Village Association, which I don't have a problem with, but they represent an average daily consumption, and our development contribution regime is based on peak demand, and the figures that were produced and attached to the report illustrate that even during the 2-year period that we've been recording water meter results, you can see that the peak demand has been met at times. The second concern we had around that proposal was that many activities could point to an average or demand that is less than peak, but they're equally likely to meet peak, and therefore we felt that moving away from the existing basis for calculating development contributions wasn't a matter that you should entertain any further. In regard to the second matter that additional information was requested, which had to do with the definition of non-residential development, you'll see that we came to the conclusion that there is a case to have another look at those words, that there is the potential for the policy to produce some anomalous and unfair outcomes, and there's also an opportunity to create a stronger causal nexus within the policy, which is at the heart of the justice and fairness of collecting development contributions. That was all I wanted to say by way of introduction. Happy to answer any questions through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, thank you, Richard. And there's 3 parts to the recommendation. I think I'll take them one by one because they're all not linked or don't need to be linked. So, questions, Stuart?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Page 74, water consumption non-residential properties. As you've just quoted, rest homes you went to maximum usage. Household use we've got there 220 litres per person per day, which is completely, that figure came from an irrelevant 2004 Auckland City study. As far as this district goes, it's about double that. We use about just under 600 litres a day per person, per household. So that's 220 is miles away to what our actual consumption is. I'd like to see it more realistic.
Does it make much difference to the decision today if it's for that number?
My concern about changing any of the figures on, I think it's on page 74, is that what those figures give us, and you're correct, it is a 2004 study, you're correct, it is an Auckland study, the observation that it is irrelevant is more subjective than objective. But at least what that schedule gives us is some relativity between different types of use. I think in the fullness of time it would be good for us to be able to develop figures based on known consumption in our district. I think, I'm conscious however, that at the moment most of our development contributions are in relation to households. We have a relatively small number of non-residential developments that attract contributions, and that schedule is really totally concerned with non-residential development. To do the work of gathering up the meter information across a range of different non-residential activities and come up with a robust schedule will require a considerable amount of work by Mr. Guthrie and his team, and the amount of benefit that we'll get from that in the short term is quite small. So from a resourcing perspective, I wouldn't recommend that you go there. That would be my professional advice. I do think in the fullness of time, however, it would be good for council to develop such a schedule based on Ashburton data.
Supplementary question?
Supplementary. Why then do we have a figure in our long-term plan and our annual report of consumption per household if it's, you consider that incorrect?
Thank you. Through the Chair, the data that's being reported through the LTP and annual plans and annual reports, it's actually a mandatory reporting requirement under the DIA, and that figure is based on consumption per household, with the assets team well and truly understanding that we do have water loss issues, but they can't pin it to anything else robustly at this point in time.
Councillor Wilson.
Mr. Mayor, I've got another question on page 99. With our roading, it's 100% targeted rate. Everybody pays on CV, capital value. Why are footpaths 30%?
Stuart, I think you've moved into the revenue and financing policy. We're in the development and financial contributions. Yep. Both riveting subjects. But we'll get to the other one. Don't worry, we'll get to it. So hold that question for then. Any further questions for the development and financial contributions policy? If not, there's a recommendation there, and there's 3 of them. I'll take them in 3 parts. So I'd like to move the first one. Council adopts the development of financial contributions policy 2020 attached. Page 36. Page 36. We're on page 36, yeah. Councillor Mackay, move.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, I move.
Yep. Second it. Councillor Lovett. Ings.
Mr. Mayor, and councillors, we've had an awful lot of discussion about this backwards and forwards, and I think the staff have summed up our feelings after each of the workshops very well. And I think it's only fair that someone, when you build a new house, put a new building up, that you pay to get into the club that's been there for some time, in all fairness to all residents in Ashburton. I hope councillors will vote in favour.
Any further speakers to the motion? Councillor Latham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just go along with what Councillor Mackay said, and I also see item number 3 there. I think that's very good that we going to do further work on the definition of non-residential development issues.
Well, yeah, point of order is we'll come to item number 3 shortly. We're just doing item number 1 at the moment.
Oh, yeah, sorry, my apologies.
Done. I'll put the motion. Right a reply? No need for right a reply. I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Item number 2. That council declines to do further work on a discounted DC for retirement villages for the reasons noted in this report. Any questions, the speaker, or someone prepared to move? Councillor Lovett moved.
I'll prepare to move that, thanks.
Second it. Councillor Cameron. Open for discussion. I'll put the motion on. Councillor Mackay.
I'm sorry, I have to excuse myself. My mother's in residential care.
Right. So you're refraining from debate. I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Item number 3. Council agrees to do further work on the definition of non-residential development for the reasons noted in the report. Someone like to move? Councillor Latham. Second it. Councillor Cameron. Roger, you'll speak.
I think I probably said it before, Mr. Mayor, but yeah, I think it's good because there are some anomalies when we start looking at sheds that are used for various things and perhaps used for accommodation, so I'm pleased to see that.
That there'll be further work done on that. That's good. Yep. No need for a right of reply. Oh, Councillor McMillan. I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Thank you. Moving over to revenue and financing policy on page 77. And any questions first? Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. You start on page 98. The way we rate our roads, it's on full valuation. It was 100%, but we're going to between 90 and 100%. Footpaths and cycleways, which are becoming a big part of things nowadays, 30% is paid by the general rate. That means that a lot of rural people who make up 80% of the general rate are paying for footpaths and cycleways in town. I think it should be more like 80 or 90% community benefit for people that live in the built-up areas, and only a 10 or 15% benefit from the general ratepayer.
Any comment? Is it thinking? Is it coming too late? We've had the discussion. We've had the hearings. We've had Tony.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, through the chair. It would be, if we were looking to make a change like this, then I would, off the top of my head, I'd be starting to think that we need to go back to the community and talk to them about it, rather than bring it in at this late change, because we didn't signal that to the community through the consultation.
Thanks, Tony. Councillor Latham.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just regarding some racecourse side in Methven, are they included?
Thank you, through the chair. So that's with regard to the map, isn't it?
That's
regarding
right,
to Methven. Yes, so we did look to try and pull those in, but the parcel of land, which is what we base the maps around, it actually shoots away out past the township boundary, and we would have ended up with this very odd map, and it would have made a lot of sense. So that's why they weren't included, but we did make sure the trees on Holmes Road were.
Yeah, okay. So the trees on Holmes Road are included. Yeah, okay.
Just one question I have, and it's on our debt repayment. It's silent in here on it. We work on the theory of 25 years, basically. Whereas, and that's what we've been doing, except for EA Network Centre, which we've moved to 40 years. Where would we discuss if we wanted to move the debt repayment out or bring it further forward, or leave it as it is?
I'll defer to Mr Brake for that answer.
Through Mr Mayor, you'd actually talk about it at your budget time when those projects that came up for loan funding were there. You may want to discuss the terms, because the terms of those loans may differ and will differ depending on the life of the project. So where we do some for 25 years, there might be some that if the project's only got a 15-year life, we'd do it for 15 or less. So it's the time when those new projects come into your budgets that require loan funding that you would discuss what the length of those loans were.
And that sets it for the life of that loan. You can't get 10 years into the loan and think we need to change this because something's changed, something's different.
You can, Mr Mayor, we can, but that makes it a little bit more difficult. So we tend to lump the loans all up. For example, if you look at the Ashburton wastewater, we lump the loans all together from year to year. So when you look at that cost centre, there might be, say, $15 million of loans. It's a bit hard to actually identify which projects they related to unless you go back. So if you wanted to do that, we'd change the way we recorded the loans. But there is no, in any budget, you can choose to alter the loan repayment amounts.
The reason I'm thinking about it is that a few years ago interest rates were 4, 5, 6%. Today they're down at 1 or 2%. So there's a saving there. Should we use that saving to pay off our debt quicker? I don't know the answer, but should we think about it? And that's all I'm asking, is should we think about it? Councillor Mackay.
No question.
You have a question?
No, I have no question.
Oh, you want to move?
Yeah, I'll give it a crack unless someone else wants to. That Council adopts the revenue and financing policy to take effect on the 1st of July 2021. I move.
Second it?
I'll second.
Councillor Latham.
Mr Mayor, this has been through a pretty robust process to date.
I sympathise with Councillor Wilson's question before, because even I would love to change some bits and pieces in here, but because of the process it's been through, the number of hours we have spent discussing this backwards and forwards over a period of some months, I think it's pretty good. So on the whole, so I move the policy so the people of Ashburton District will know what it will cost them to live here.
Thank you. Further debate? No. I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Get carried. Thank you. Thanks, team. Move on now. Item number 17, section 17A review. Oh, page 121. Welcome, Steve. Councillors, we have the report in front of us, and we have a more in-depth report, which is you probably on a different page in the computer program, Stella. So, any questions for clarification? Oh, Hamish?
Just by way of introduction, through you, Mr. Mayor, the 17A review was called for on open spaces, and this is the outcome of that. It was conducted by Paul Wilson when he was with us in a temporary role, and I just want to, I guess, explain why the recommendation is in two parts. Because a 17A review is really about the efficiency and effectiveness of the service, and whether there is a better way to carry out that level of service for the community. And you can see in our recommendation one, the recommendation is to carry on with that service being provided in-house. The second recommendation is slightly outside the formal 17A process, but it does come from information that the author discovered or believed to be true in the course of the 17A review. And so our recommendation is that we take that resourcing issue to one side and consider that alongside all other resourcing and project matters for the LTP, and that we but we don't amend the 17A review so that you get to see exactly what Paul wrote, but that we take it outside the adoption of the review and consider that resourcing matter separately as part of the LTP with all other resourcing matters that we will have to consider. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll have to go to the full 17A report, but there were a few anomalies in it to come up with the answer that he did. I picked councillors. He used Selwyn and Waimakariri to get an argument in some places, then he went to Taupo and somewhere else to get the argument somewhere else. Well, anybody can do that to come up with the answer you want. To me, if we were going to compare like with like, we would have stuck with Selwyn all the way through on the different arguments that you use. Why would you use Selwyn for this argument and Taupo for this argument and something else for this argument? That's gerrymandering your answer. So I was disappointed there. I still agree that the best way is to deliver it within house, but just talking about the 17A report, it was a strange way of doing it, I felt.
Thanks for that. Any comments, only if you have, Steve?
Yeah, good afternoon, councillors.
A bit closer with the microphone, Steve, thanks.
Just to answer Councillor Wilson's query there, where the comparisons were depended on which part of the report they were looking at, because it would have looked at which councils were delivering a similar service to us. It wouldn't be worth us comparing, say, our cemeteries operation in-house compared to another council that delivered cemeteries under contract. So Paul would have lined up councils that were operating under a similar sort of conditions.
Thank you. Further questions? Ready for a recommendation? No one wants to move. Councillor Mackay moved.
I'll move both parts, or do you want to take them separately?
No, if you want to take them separately, or we can take them both together.
I'll take both together.
Second.
Take them both together because I agree it should be in-house. I also, Mr Mayor, believe that there are a lot of efficiencies, and I've actually mentioned 2 efficiencies that I think could take place since I've been a councillor. One is that I believe in our spraying program we can be more efficient. I saw a young lady the other day, obviously had Roundup, and she was moving very, very slowly round a set of tussocks on a corner of the road, and I actually believe that there could be an easier way if the homework was done with a chemical company, for example, to get something that might kill the annual weeds but not be so as invasive to humans. I've also suggested bigger mowers from time to time. I even suggested a big wide mower and a decent tractor, and I got an answer which I thought was sensible from the staff. But I think it'll give us time to look at the efficiencies of in-house before we make the decision on whether to consider increased staff resourcing in the long-term plan process. So that's why I moved the 2 together. I think there's quite a bit of work still to be done on efficiencies inside what is happening now in our parks and reserves.
Great, thanks, Councillor Wilson.
I've got a point of order. I thought our CEO recommended not to include the second part in this motion, to look at it in the long-term plan.
No, just to clarify through Mr Mayor, we separated it out as part of the recommendations so that any motion to adopt the 17A review didn't automatically adopt the resourcing recommendations. So you can take, as Councillor Mackay has moved, you can take the 2 together because they're separate. What we want to do was make sure that it didn't, we didn't slide the extra resources into the adoption of the report. But you can take that, recommendations 1 and 2 are quite independent of each other, so you can take them together. And I think speaking for Councillor Mackay, he's simply referring those resourcing matters to the LTP. He's got his own reasons for moving that, which is fine. But taking it out means that the adoption of the 17A report doesn't create those extra resources that we didn't want to have them sliding under the radar.
Well, I'll move an amendment that we take the second section out and that we discuss only accepting the 17A report as outlined in recommendation number 1.
So you're moving number 1 only?
I'll move an amendment that we look at number 1 and number 2 as 2 separate.
Right. Is there a seconder for the amendment?
I can second the amendment.
You want to?
No, I can. I'm seeking source of clarification. We can have the amendment and discuss it. That's fine.
Okay. You've moved and seconded the amendment that they be taken separately, and we're now dealing with, I will need to put the, discuss the amendment, that's right. So, discussion. Carolyn.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chief Executive, for your clarification. If I can just summarise, as I understand it, we have the 17A report that does suggest we increase staff, but by moving part 1, we are not necessarily approving the increased staff numbers without a review at the long-term plan. Is that a summary?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, that's correct. The 17A review would not traditionally recommend resources. Sure. It would simply say that the method of providing the service for the community should be in-house or by a CCO or outsourced. So it's unusual for a 17A review to reflect on the internal resources. Okay. And so that's why we separated it out. Yes. We do suggest we stay in-house for the open spaces work. And we want the resources issue to be separated out and taken through to the LTP alongside all the other issues that you will consider. Yeah.
Any further discussion? Oh.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't think this amendment deserves to be carried. The recommendation there is perfectly clear. It says that Council, as part of the long-term plan process, consider staff resourcing be increased in public conveniences by 1 part-time position, cemeteries and open spaces by 2 full-time positions. It doesn't say we're going to increase it. We're going to say as part of the long-term plan, we are going to consider it.
Councillor Cameron?
I think, thank you, Councillor Lethem, for that, but I think the part 2 basically preconceives the idea of how many extra staff are needed, and I think the whole thing should be go to the long-term plan without any preconceived ideas about additional staff, because there may be a way that incumbent staff can be used in other areas, or as Angus alluded to, more efficient use of time in some areas. So personally, I'm for the separation of the recommendations as per my seconding the amendment.
Stuart, you're right to reply.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. No, it's exactly as Councillor Cameron says.
Mr. Chairman, under which standing order do you get a right to reply on the amendment?
I was thinking that myself.
Well, I'm speaking to the amendment.
Speaking to the
I haven't spoke to the amendment.
Right,
I've only moved it so far.
Yeah.
Why I'm in favour of the amendment, we are there to discuss whether we accept the 17A report, and all we're doing is accepting the report as it's outlined. To me, to even consider increasing staff at this stage is completely erroneous. It's not part of what the 17A report should be. A 17A report is looking how we organise it, whether it's in-house, employing contractors, so on and so on. The second part is considering extra staff. Well, that's completely separate to me. I'm in favour of the first part, but I'm totally opposed to the second part. So why should I be compromised to either vote all in favour or all against? To me, it's 2 separate motions. That's why if those that want to push the second part, they can vote for the amendment, and then we'll all discuss the second part as something completely separate.
I'm going to put the amendment. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against?
No. No.
Show of hands. All in favour for the amendment? Carried. So the amendment means we're taking it in 2 parts.
It's got to become the substantive motion.
It becomes a substantive motion, yeah, in 2 parts. So, so Angus has, so it's now Stuart's motion, Councillor Wilson's motion, and we'll deal with the first part first. Number 1.
I'll move that, because we've passed that in 2 motions. I'll move now that number 1, I'm in favour. The council recommend be in favour of the first part. We accept the 17A report.
Have a seconder for number 1?
Second that.
Councillor Cameron. Councillor Mackay.
I wish to register my support that this be passed, hopefully unanimously, because I think the report has done a good job, and I'll have further to say in a minute.
We're going to put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Item number 2. Number 2 of the motion. Mover.
I'll move that.
Councillor Lethem. Seconder. Councillor Mackay.
No.
For the debate.
Councillor Lovett.
Oh.
I made the original motion, which is somewhere in the ether.
Yeah.
If you find it, tell me what happened.
You lost it.
I'll second.
Councillor Lovett. Seconder.
I'll second that.
Open to debate. Stuart.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. We don't need to pass this at this stage. I don't think. Why are we looking at extra staff at all? It's part of the long-term plan, as the CEO says. We'll be looking at all sorts of staffing changes. We've already had biodiversity officer extras and things like that. That will be part of our. Somebody wanted extra 4 librarians. So I mean, there's lots of extra staffing changes in the wings, and I don't think we should pass this to say that there's 2.5 to go into open spaces already when we haven't discussed staffing as a whole. This can be kept in mind, obviously it will, but at this stage I would completely, in my opinion, we should completely ignore that second part.
Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I refuse to ignore, Mr Mayor and councillors, the suggestion that we don't consider staff resourcing. I believe we should consider staff resourcing. I think we should signal as a council that we want staff to bring us the reports and everything as part of the long-term plan process for funding. It does not in any way mean that I'm in favour of extra staff. It means I'm in favour that the subjects should be discussed on how beautiful we want this town to be, on what services we want the people to have. But if you remember back to my speech, Mr Mayor and councillors, I talked about, I believe there are efficiencies that can be taken place in the next few months that might see these staff not required. But I want us to consider the efficiencies and the staffing as a council. If we vote this down, the staff have full right not to bring us any reports on staffing levels in the open spaces team.
Roger, you've
I might,
you moved the motion. So
I might just delay until you want. I have a right to reply before you put the motion.
Spoken to the motion yet?
No, I haven't. No, I just
speak to it now then.
But I see you've got another speaker there, so I can speak to it. Okay, I actually agree with Councillor Mackay. This is very simple. It's not saying we're going to increase the staff. It's not saying we're going to do anything like that. All we are going to do is consider it as part of the long-term plan process. I think we're getting far too pedantic and perhaps misreading what's actually been put in front of us by staff. And I think I agree with Councillor Mackay. We must know what's going on, and we should give very due credence to what the staff put in front of us. We're not deciding whether we're going to increase the staff. We are just going to put it as part of the long-term plan process.
Councillor Lovett.
They've spoken probably better words than I could say, but I totally support them on this going forward. It's just signalling there what we may need in the future.
Councillor Cameron.
Yes, and this is why I disagree. It is signalling, so it's preempting the position in the long-term plan discussion time. Personally, I'd support it if it had out that we don't need 2 full-time people and 1 part-time person, and it goes to the long-term plan for consideration. Then I think that's a natural progression.
But if and when it goes to the long-term plan, it'll come with a business case to support it. So we'll have a robust discussion around that. So there will be a business case for that, signalling that. Hamish, you were...
I just wanted to give Council an assurance it won't be predetermined. We'll simply be putting this resourcing question to Council as part of the long-term process, the long-term plan process. What we had tried to do here was to reflect the actual content of the report that Paul Wilson had authored, because if we had ignored this issue, then you may well have asked why was there recommendations that weren't highlighted, and that there may have been a suspicion of predetermination. So we tried to put it in a spotlight so that you could see that we weren't predetermining it. We had noted the issue, and that we were going to pull it through for your consideration at the appropriate forum. Yeah.
Councillor Latham, right to reply.
Just very quickly, Mr Mayor, I'm a wee bit disappointed that some councillors here seem to think that staff are preempting something and they're putting in front of us, and there's no way to change that. I think we do owe staff the privilege of considering these things seriously, and if councillors are not confident enough in the long-term plan process to change the recommendations, then I'm very disappointed.
Right to reply has been heard. I'm going to put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? No. Passed. Carried. Thank you. We now have the experienced Mid-Canterbury board with us. We've got Gary Lee, board member. Please come forward, gentlemen and ladies. Bruce Moffat and Lauren Heafy. Yeah, Christchurch NZ. Gary, did you just want to introduce your team being and there's an apology from and Joanna Morris, an apology, and James Berger, that's right. So Gary's filling that spot today. So if you'd like to introduce your team, that'd be great, Gary.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just very quickly, on behalf of James, he sends his apologies. Obviously, he's reasonably busy this time of the year. That's what's going on. Yep. First of all, obviously, everyone knows Bruce. And on Bruce's right is Lauren Heafy from Christchurch NZ. I've just got a couple of things to go through from...
Well, that's great. Councillors, the report's on page 29.
Okay.
And you might also touch on the new way you're doing, delivering the tourism for Mid-Canterbury as well.
I'll leave Bruce to run through most of that.
Yep.
Just as I said, on behalf of James, firstly, James wished to formally thank Rachel from the council in the workings that we've had in the last 3 months, going through with staff and things like that through the changes, and he really wanted that to be the first thing mentioned. So as everyone knows, we've gone through some major changes. This was obviously due to COVID plus the council directives. We are fortunate that all staff are now in other positions, and they've all managed to get other employment, so that the board was our major issue moving forward, based on previous things that had happened with other areas that we've had to change. Bruce obviously has accepted the position at Christchurch NZ, and he'll run through what he's up to. Just a couple of other little things. We finalised the 2019 audit last week. Finally. And James did mention we're hoping not to have another one. So that's the thing. And the current board are working in association with Hamish on decommissioning EMC. So it's another, obviously that's the most important thing for the board moving forward.
Yeah, thanks. You may have another 2 audits yet.
We may.
The year just finished and the year in now.
Yep.
And work through whatever happens with EMC in the future.
Certainly.
So, yeah.
I'll now hand over to Bruce, and he'll run through the marketing.
Okay, thanks, Bruce.
Thanks very much. Good afternoon. So before I hand you over to Lauren to sort of talk about the Christchurch NZ marketing agreement, I just want to clarify, yes, we do have 2 audits. One's coming up in November. So we're just preparing for that at the moment. But look, it's been a bit of a journey for the last couple of months, and I'm very excited about working in conjunction with Christchurch NZ. They've got an amazing team, and already in place is a number of initiatives around marketing and around promotions that I'm heavily engaged in already, and it's fantastic. And hopefully we'll be able to show you a couple of the pieces very, very shortly. But before I do that, I have a quarterly report that's in your documentation, and I just wanted to make just check and see whether or not there is any comments around that document.
Yeah, I did have a look at your video there, and it's definitely in reverse. As is the other ones for the districts as well. I look at the other districts as well, and see them, and yeah, they are. It's a catchy way of doing it, really.
Got to try and break the cut through. There's so many tourism operators that are on TV and various different demand channels that if you don't do something different, you don't get noticed. So that's the power of advertising.
Yep, cool. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. Through the chair, just wanted to ask about your Mid-Canterbury Tourism Community Advisory Group. So you look like you've got a great group of people. I had to Google a couple of them because I didn't know who they were, but how did you get to that group of people, and were there any tourism operators in Ashburton who could have joined that group?
Yes, so firstly, how we come about it, I emailed out our entire operational database, and we had, out of that we had 4 people that came back and suggested they'd be very, very keen to get on board. I approached Bevan. I also approached Bevan directly. I also approached Tracy Green directly. Tracy is a consultant that works in a number of organisations, but mainly in tourism, and she's very, very good. She's ex one of the big tour companies in Australia, and she was a CEO in that platform. To answer your direct question about Ashburton, this is just last night has been updated, so it's already gone to your documentation. But we also have Michelle Klein from the Ashburton Bella Vista. She's also joining us as well. We were certainly lacking appointments from the Ashburton area, which was a concern for me, but we've rectified that.
Just one question on page. Well, it's my page 34. I don't know what it is. It's on the alert levels of alert level 2. It says events more than 500 people in an event. At alert level 1, mass events more than 500 not permitted. Is that correct?
Yeah. When we wrote this, it was quite a dynamic change in the way that central government was working through this. So I didn't want to make any changes to this because obviously that would switch out what we've presented last time, last quarter. But you're correct. I mean, this has been quite a moving process through COVID. But look, in level 1, we're following the principles of what central government are advising.
And we can have as many as we like again at level 1, people attending an event. Yeah.
That's correct, yeah.
Yep, that's good. We're hanging out for that for some time.
Absolutely, yeah, and there's quite a few events on it at the moment, actually. In the last week we've had 9 new events that are on our What's On page. So there's plenty of events going on out there.
Yep. Councillor Lovett?
I'm just wondering, is there any way we can get any stats on all the Kiwis that are travelling through the district and the camper van usage to get a kind of a run on that, and then when the tourists are allowed in, just to see what is local and what is international, just to get us some baselines.
Yeah. Kia ora, I'm Lauren. I'm going to touch on that. I've actually got a presentation for you all to go through some of the initiatives, but data is absolutely one of the biggest gaps at the moment and something that we're collectively investing in. We'll be investing in a piece of technology which is called TripTech, which follows your cell phone and essentially aggregates data so that we can watch visitor flows, where they're coming from, how they're travelling, and then correlate it with paymark and credit card data to work out how much they're staying and what the intent of their business was. So hopefully we're going to have a lot better visibility of that.
Great, thanks for that. It might be timely to move into that presentation, Evan.
Great. Well, while Bruce gets set up, I'll introduce myself. Kia ora koutou, my name's Lauren Aberhart-Heafy. I am General Manager of Destination and Attraction at Christchurch NZ. I've been there for about 2.5 years. As that role, I head up tourism for Christchurch and a large portion of Canterbury, major events, business events, international education and film. I am actually a Motueka girl originally, and so it's nice to be back in the South Island. And for us, this opportunity to work with yourselves was really exciting, but also we recognise that this is our first opportunity to speak with you. So thank you for your patience as we've worked through the process with Experience Mid-Canterbury. We've been working closely with the board, and now feels like the right time to come and introduce the Christchurch NZ team and what our plans are as we move forwards. So,
councillors, it's only on the one screen.
Oh, apologise.
No, it's not your fault. But I'm sure someone would let you take the blame.
Don't hurt your necks. It's actually not that interesting, I promise. So some of you will be familiar with the South Island Destination Management Plan, which the Canterbury Mural Forum received funding from the Provincial Growth Fund in 2019. That plan indicated there was a need for greater collaboration within tourism, particularly within Canterbury. The earthquake in Christchurch had the impact of absolutely developing the wider destinations of Canterbury, which was a fantastic result. However, Christchurch really kind of lost itself as it became a bit of a donut. So visitation in Canterbury really built up, Christchurch sort of fell away. Now that Christchurch has re-established itself as a destination, there's a great benefit, a mutually beneficial approach in working together and promoting the entire Canterbury as a destination. So we've created a combined plan with wider Christchurch and Canterbury, including Mid-Canterbury, and ultimately we're working on behalf of Mid-Canterbury into our database to promote Ashburton, Methven, Mount Hutt into Christchurch residents, and then wider Canterbury into the North Island and other parts of the South Island. We're creating positive links through to Mackenzie, along with Selwyn, Waimakariri and Banks Peninsula, and working closely with Hurunui and Kaikoura. So we've established an agreement with yourselves and with Experience Mid-Canterbury, and we've got a number of KPIs which you can see up here from the contract. The first KPI was recruiting the Mid-Canterbury marketing manager, and we're absolutely delighted to secure Bruce in that role. It gives us a huge amount of intellectual knowledge that comes with Bruce, also the contacts and the ability to have an inherently local presence. We also have a similar contract with Mackenzie, and the success of that contract has been having local staff employed in the community who are representative of the local identity. And for all intents and purposes, Christchurch NZ very much acts as just a platform. So we provide things like HR, IT, finance, project management support, data and insights and marketing resource, but ultimately this is still very much about Experience Mid-Canterbury and your own identity. So you can see up here within the specific KPIs, we've got quite a lot around COVID-19 response. That's pretty clear that tourism has been absolutely devastated by COVID-19. And we're working through some of the data at the moment to understand what the baseline is. We originally developed KPIs based on last year's numbers, but we would absolutely fail on that. And so we're really just working on developing a baseline at the moment. So you can see we've got some targets around estimated advertising value of the local and domestic marketing that we do, around media for mills and hosting domestic travel trade. Then the central government announced a relatively large initiative through the Strategic Tourism Assets Protection Program to invest in regional tourism organisations. Now, unfortunately, Experience Mid-Canterbury wasn't classified as an RTO within that program, but we were able to secure some of that funding for Christchurch NZ to represent Mid-Canterbury. So Christchurch NZ has received $1.4 million through the Strategic Asset Protection Program, and I'm going to talk you through what we'll be looking to spend that funding on. So essentially what it means for yourselves is that your investment is vastly increased because of central government funding and then of course Christchurch NZ's internal resources. So the focus for this fund, and therefore the focus of the next year, will really be on driving domestic visitation. There will be a small amount of work in keeping some offshore markets alive, most especially Australia, but primarily we need to focus on getting the Canterbury proposition really front of mind, particularly to Aucklanders. We're also establishing a Canterbury Tourism Data Hub. Now, each of the Canterbury RTOs are paying into that. We'll be employing a specific visitor data analyst and investing in tourism data, including TripTech, which I spoke about before, which is quite a cutting-edge technology solution to tourism data. Acknowledging that tourism data is very difficult to track in regions like Ashburton, where you have quite low commercial accommodation, where your retail spend could just be from day visitors or business visitors. So this mobile phone data is going to give us a greater access to understand where your leisure visitors are coming from. We're also working with tourism operators to develop their own product, to pivot it to domestic and to incubate new tourism product. And most excitingly, I think for this region, food tourism development and agri-tech tourism development. So we're working with MPI and the Canterbury Mural Forum on the Future Food and Fibre project to develop tourism products that support food storytelling, provenance storytelling and agri-tourism. Possibly less relevant to this district is the labour market transition. The vast unemployment caused by COVID-19 is something that we're working through to redeploy tourism staff into other roles. And we're also working on where there are challenges within other sectors, for example, agriculture, horticulture, and where tourism staff can be redeployed onto those labour challenges. We'll be building industry capability, particularly in digital marketing. What we've noticed is that the boom of tourism has meant that a lot of small tourism businesses have no idea how to market themselves. They have absolutely no idea how to set up a website or to have a social media account because there has been enough business to sustain them. So we're investing quite heavily in building their capability. Acknowledging that the eyesight is no longer around, we have made the same decision in Christchurch, and we'll be working to create an ambassador program where we can provide visitor information to front of house staff in cafes, hotels, Uber drivers, taxi drivers, you name it, to make sure that they've got visitor information and we're providing a good visitor service across the board instead of relying on one centre. And then eventually, as the tourism industry recovers, we would like to look to develop a membership program where tourism operators pay a membership fee for additional services, and that we work through a long-term and sustainable option for a balanced approach to investment in tourism where local government investment is balanced with private sector investment. So possibly something worth considering as you move into the LTP process. As mentioned, we are focusing heavily on industry support. The Pivot to Domestic program that we developed has now been rolled out nationally. It's valued at about $2,000 per business. We've also been working to package product together for domestic trade and have a $1.2 million Tourism Transitions Program fund, which is available to all tourism businesses in the region, up to $15,000 per business. In addition, Minister Davis recently announced the $50 million Regional Events Fund. So that is a fund primarily to invest in the event sector over the next 4 years. And I'm delighted to let you know that Ashburton has received a portion of that funding. I can't remember how much you got. I think it's about $300,000 across 4 years. That is being led by a lead agency across the country. Christchurch NZ is the allocated lead agency for Canterbury. We will receive $7 million and it's based on the international visitor spend, and a proportion of that. We'll be establishing an independent panel to make event decision making, but ultimately there's no real cap. If there are events in Ashburton, Methven or across the district who are looking for investment, that panel will be there with $7 million across 4 years to invest in those events. We know that events are a huge driver of domestic tourism. They're also big identity builders for districts and they're huge brand offerings. So as we move forwards, I would really like to work with your team here at Ashburton District Council to develop an event portfolio where we can consider high level investment across 4 years to develop a sustainable events portfolio that drives visitation. It really is to stimulate domestic tourism, so it's not sort of farmers markets and school fetes. It is, you know, higher level things that are going to make people think about your district, and it is intended to offset the impact of COVID-19 through the reduction in international visitors. So I'll send through some, well my team actually will send some quite detailed information through on that, probably to yourself Hamish, and then we'll work through Bruce and yourselves with administrating that funding through to events in your district. We also, as part of the Strategic Tourism Assets Program, as I said, received a considerable amount of money, but with that money came an obligation to work collectively and collaboratively and market the entire Canterbury. Unfortunately, our key partners at Christchurch International Airport were no longer able to fund this campaign, but central government coming in on their white horse meant that we were able to get this across the line anyway. So Explore CHC is a central South Island domestic marketing proposition to directly compete with Queenstown. So ultimately we're proposing that visitors from Auckland can fly into Christchurch. They can have almost every experience under the sun and fly back out of Christchurch. They have absolutely no need to go south. I don't think my friends in Queenstown are very happy with me, but I'm going to let Bruce talk to you a little bit more about this destination marketing campaign, of which you feature very heavily.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Lauren. So firstly, what I wanted to do is just highlight the video that the Mayor was talking about just a couple of minutes ago. There are 3 sets within the video collection. There's one that's a joint collaboration with the Mackenzie District and ourselves. The idea of that is collaboration obviously keeps the cost down, so it's quite helpful. But then we've also got a 30-second and a 15-second ad that we utilise both in social media and also out into the wider parts. All of these videos are in market as we speak, TVNZ On Demand, TV1, and you can also see them through the Sky channels as well. So, and we're getting huge numbers. Even in the first week was quite an interesting set of numbers, so it's fantastic. But I'll just play this one for you anyway, and we'll get it an idea. It's quite loud. This is another one here. I think it's the overall speakers.
I think that was the same one.
Oh, sorry, it was the same one. Sorry about that. Thank you. This one is the 15-second one. So the concept behind this is that, you know, Christchurch is kind of the end of the journey or the beginning of the journey, and so when we've taken this process and gone into the reverse, it's sort of made that you know, classic identification of starting out somewhere and then coming back to Christchurch to finish off that adventure or that trip.
And helpfully, Christopher Nolan has just made a massive movie, which is mostly in reverse. So if you go and see Tenet,
yes,
this
very timely. Very timely. The amount of people that, you know, have watched this over and over and over and finally discovered that it was in reverse, it's quite interesting. So, yeah, but this is the combined piece that we've done as well with Mackenzie.
So many stars. Wow. This is the best trip. Wow. So many stars.
So a bit of excitement there, really. So that's the idea of the visual work. we've also got a number of other creatives that are out there. This is some content that's been put through stuff. Part of the Explore CHC campaign is a very, very big campaign in conjunction with stuff. And so we're constantly building storylines and giving them some really good content to write about. In the last couple of weeks, we've had a piece around Methven and talking about it's not just a snow town. We've had a piece about Ashburton. We're talking about things like the Aviation Museum and Trot's Gardens and the likes of. And so we'll continue to build on those as well. I haven't got an image for you today of the Auckland billboards, but I don't know if you're familiar with the Anzac Ave corner. There is an enormous billboard there, and those ads that you've just seen there are rotating every 3 minutes around on that area. There's also another couple up in Queen Street, and there's another one on K Road as well. So we're really penetrating the Auckland market to get them off their butts, so to speak, and to jump on an aeroplane, come down to Christchurch and explore Canterbury. Yeah, it's exciting. It's still a little bit too soon to be able to get a really good gauge of the numbers that are coming through, but we should have those probably by next week, so we'll better update you from there.
So that is us. Happy to take any questions, conscious you have a tight time frame, but it's really wonderful to meet you all, and I really look forward to working in partnership over the next year through to the 30th of June and working with Bruce and the team as well.
Cool, thanks. Questions, and we have Councillor McMillan.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a question. The videos are great. I had seen them before and I didn't realise the longer one was actually backwards. How bad is that? But just picking up on that ambassador program, I think that's a great idea. And I was just wondering about the kiosks, and I know you've got one in Twizel, is that correct?
The Mid-Canterbury District Council do, yes.
Oh, so yeah. That's not
no,
a
we don't operate that.
Oh, okay.
No, they are digitising it at the moment. So I'm happy to pass you on information of what they're doing there, because we have been sharing information, but they're digitising the kiosk so that it's a website interface. It actually goes off our website, but it's skinned Mackenzie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Thanks. Just one question. On one of the first slides you had, there was a Mid-Canterbury Tourism Advisory Group, I think. Mm-hmm. Who's on that?
So that's in your paper. I think that's
31.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus Michelle Klein. Right. Plus Michelle Klein from Ballester, Ashburton. Got it.
Cool.
So for us, when we have a similar group in Mackenzie, and we have one in Christchurch too, and ultimately that really helps us make sure that our work is tailored to the industry, that it's very transparent, and that we're working collectively rather than just in a silo.
Yeah, great. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I was pleased to hear you say you're going to encourage local tourism industry put more money in. As a district council, we've been putting 300,000 ratepayers' money in, and the industry does, what, 50,000? They just refused to support the amount that we do. I'm quite happy. I think you spoke dollar for dollar. I would really support that sort of thing, so that ratepayers can see that the industry is actually appreciating what the ratepayers do.
I think a long-term aspiration across the tourism system should be that there is joint funding. Right now is obviously incredibly challenging for the industry, so that is certainly a long-term aspiration, something we'll look to develop. As tourism goes through a little bit of a genesis after COVID-19, I think that there will be changes in the system from central government and probably local government in terms of investment in tourism. So, I think your point is very valid.
Thank you. No further questions? No. Thank you, Gary, Lauren and Bruce, for your presentation. Good to meet you, Lauren.
Yes, you too.
And yeah, we'll see you next time, no doubt, in next report, 3 months' time, I presume. Yeah. Good. Thanks very much. Keep up the work. Thank you. I think it'll be a great way of doing tourism for us. You'll do. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yep. Okay, councillors, moving over to page. Oh, of course. Sorry. Yep. We just need to receive that report, councillors. So someone like to move and second. Councillor McMillan moved. Councillor Lovett seconded. All in favour, please say aye. It's carried. Thank you.
Oh, of course we do.
Now, on item number 18, page 133. Ashburton Zone Committee Joint Letter. Tony, anything to add?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No, nothing further to add, but I have got Andy here who sits in on those committee meetings who can provide context if needed.
But just the one question I have, Andy, it's on page 139, it's a fold-out, and it's a generic one. It talks about reporting, and the Zone Committee will report the action plan achievement to councils every 18 months. This seems to be a long time between reporting.
Yeah, I actually had a feeling that they may have, that was spoken about at the workshop about that time frame. And I think the Zone Committee did make the comment that they would prefer a shorter period.
Yeah. Councillor Mackay?
Mr Mayor, yeah, just one thing I'd like to check up on. It's on page 138 and it's under ecosystem, ecosystem health and biodiversity targets, and it's number 2 in Roman numerals, reducing the number of fish barriers in the zone. Does that save us from putting up our fish screens? Because people are talking about ecological artificial water races these days, so that could be seen as a barrier to fish. That's why I asked the question.
Might be a long string to the bow, but...
Yeah. I believe the fish barriers is about making it the passage of fish through waterways easier. So some structures that are put in waterways actually prevent fish travelling. I think that's the reference to reducing fish barriers.
Okay, so it doesn't mean we're going to get the bulldozer out and straighten out the Ashburton River for fish.
Not sure.
Like we built a island for birds.
Not sure. Not sure. Take it whichever way you like, I suppose. Councillor Wilson?
No, Mr Guthrie is exactly right. There's a fish screen to keep fish being into waterways that end up out on the land or in an irrigator, and a fish barrier is they stop migrating fish moving up waterways. So sometimes culverts and things create a big drop below them and fish can't make it, so it's in lower water races and waterways that migratory fish can get through. Two completely different things.
But just on the reporting every 18 months, it seems just too far out for me. 6 months we can put in this like what we want, I presume.
Yeah, look, I think that the matter did come up at the workshop. I know that was discussed, but I thought that they had agreed to take that on board. I can talk to Dave Moore and find out exactly where they landed with that. But it was, even the Zone Committee indicated on the day of the workshop that they thought it was a longer period as well.
Was that workshop, that review
Yeah, that was the one that, yeah, you guys were attending as well.
Yeah, which we haven't seen the results of, I don't think.
This is the result.
Oh, this is the result.
Yeah, this is the result.
Yeah. Recommendation there, councillors, that we receive the report and council approves the letter of shared priorities with Environment Canterbury to the Ashburton Zone Committee as attached in Appendix 1. Councillor Wilson.
I'll have great pleasure to move the recommendation.
Councillor Lovett.
I'm just wondering whether we could put that in about the reporting time and that otherwise it's just going to get lost.
And you've seconded the motion.
I'll second the motion,
Yep.
but yeah.
Every 6 months they should be reporting?
Yes.
Is that, we can send that signal?
Yes.
I'll attach that with their
Attach it.
recommendation then perhaps.
Attach it
Yes.
with the change to reporting every 6 months to council.
Yeah, otherwise they could go off beam and...
18 months is a long time.
It's too long. It's too long if things aren't going right.
Yeah. Any...
Sorry, because it's a joint committee, We'll just need to make sure that the ECAN is also happy with the 6-month reporting, because we don't get to arbitrarily change one part of this. This is a letter of shared priorities and shared action, but on the basis that that's our view, and if ECAN share it, then it can absolutely be part of the action plan, I'd have thought.
Yeah, there's 2 councils, they can report to ECAN every 80 months if they wish, but I think we wish every 6. So, yep. Any further speakers for or against the motion? I'll put the motion in favour. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Thank you. Number 19, Three Waters Stimulus Funding Delivery Plan. Andy, you've got a report there. Neil, any questions? First, I do have one question. I think the funding was 3.99. It's been dropped. We've lost a 9 off the end. Is that correct?
I understood the funding at 3.9, but I have to be proven wrong.
You're both right. It was 3.99, so it is just a rounding issue, and the money will be 2 lots of 3.99.
It made a difference when you put the 2 lots of 3.9 together. You lost $200,000.
Yeah.
But I do know $50,000 of that 3.99 has been used for a coordinator. Is that the word? From the Mayoral Forum has taken some of it.
No.
Or not? Am I not correct?
No. With respect, Mr. Mayor, the issue of the piece of work that the Canterbury region is doing under the auspices of the Mayoral Forum as part of examining the future Three Waters delivery as part of this overall reform has a cost of which Ashburton's share is estimated to be $54,000. How we pay for that is our own business. So it's not tagged against this particular funding. And what we have said in order to keep the delivery plan focused on the amount of money is to simplify it to the recommended project work, and that we have some other budgetary capacity in the Three Waters consultant area, which would enable us to pay for the contribution to the overall Canterbury regional work. So it wasn't, it's not directly linked to the funding.
And that work will better inform all of the Canterbury on the way forward.
That's right. So the Canterbury regional work is not focused on the delivery of the infrastructural improvements through this funding. It's focusing on the big reform, the structural reform of Three Waters and what might best suit Canterbury councils as a sort of a subset of the overall national reform program. There are a number of those regional examinations going on across the country, and we're all acutely aware that we don't want duplication. So what we don't want is for the Canterbury piece to be pulling together a whole lot of asset information and data and finances, and that we then have to turn around and repeat for the DIA through the national reform program. So there's a strong desire to make sure that that work is coordinated in a way that is as efficient as possible.
No further questions. We have a recommendation in front of us that we approve the ARS pipeline as the primary subject of using these 3.9 or 7.8 million fund, and there's also a secondary one there of the Methven IL4 reservoir as a contingency project. And number 2, authorise the Chief Executive to approve the draft delivery plan and subsequent minor amendments to the draft delivery plan post-lodgement as necessary to finalise the delivery plan and secure approval. Someone like to move? Councillor McMillan.
I'd like to move both of those recommendations.
Seconded, Councillor Cameron. Open for discussion. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. When did we actually have in our long-term plan to do that?
The ARS?
The relief sewer pipeline.
3 long-term plans ago.
Yeah, the ARS has had a checkered history of being in about the last 3 long-term plans. Most recently, it featured in year 1 of the current plan, and as part of the budget management, well, for when we did the river crossing and pump station tender award, it was agreed that we would defer the funding into that, or redirect the funding into that project to manage the budget and manage the tender. The intention was to bring the project back to year one of the new long-term plan if this money hadn't arrived.
So the design of this pipe is just about there. Where's that at?
Yeah, it's a matter of weeks away. We're very well advanced. The only matter that is probably still of not concern, but certainly one that we need to address, is the matter of material supply. And I'm talking to Neil and Hamish about options around addressing that risk as well.
Yeah, and this links nicely with the under the river pipe and pumping station.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually took the decision, because the ARS project was looking reasonably imminent. We actually made the decision to extend the starter pipe work up Milton Road South from that project, just to make it a bit easier for this contract to be facilitated.
Further questions? Debate? Right to reply? I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Thank you. Number 20, here we are up to. We are. Yeah, 152. Hekio Hines Water Enhancement Trust, access to stock water and land for managed aquifer recharge project. Questions, councillors? Clarification? Stuart?
No questions. I'd like to move the recommendation. I think it's a nationwide, almost part of a worldwide project that is received worldwide publicity, especially nationwide publicity, in other areas in the North Island are possibly interested to see how it's going, and the results that we get from the committee or the trust just shows you that it really is a success, so that in the future, the way that the new legislation regarding nitrates, there's so few options we can to reduce them in the short term. In the long term, perhaps it is, but that's decades to do it. This bar project can lower it, in a reasonably short term, and I think it may be really important to be able to continue the type of agriculture we have in this district in the immediate future.
Seconder, Councillor Love, you love it?
Yes, I will second it, and I think it's a great project, and I think we've got to remember it's not the farmers of today that's probably done all the nitrates down below. It's going back, a century or so. So, yeah.
Seconded. Open for discussion. Councillor Latham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just get a little nervous when I see things like they confirms its ongoing support for the managed aquifer recharge and agrees in principle. So we can agree in principle, and I'm not insinuating anything here, we can agree in principle, but will anything get done?
I'm sure the Hines Hekio Trust will make sure it gets done, and they meet monthly and are advancing. This is the request has come from them for this, to make sure it gets done. Yeah. No further discussion, debate. I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Number item 21. Page 152. Oh, done that. 168. Offer to acquire Ealing Hall. Who have we got?
We break and do the staff because.
Okay, Tony's not here.
I don't see Claire, I don't see Steve, I don't see Tanya.
Righto.
We could just do the staff.
Okay. We'll move on now to the welcoming new and long-serving staff and hand over to Sarah.
Thank you. Through the chair, I've got a number of staff that I'd like to acknowledge on behalf of council today. First of all, we've got a new starter. You may have seen his face. Richard Fitzgerald is our agricultural portfolio advisor. So Richard is in the back of the room there. So thank you very much. And in terms of service recognitions, it's fair to say that 2015 was a good year. We have got 4 staff who have got 5 years service. So I'd like to say a couple of words about, I guess, their career to date at ADC, and if after each one could please come up and meet Hamish and the Mayor, and they'll give you a small token of our appreciation. So first of all, I'd like to share a few words about Chaitan Nair. He's our application specialist in the IS team, and in 2019 he moved into the team leader role of business improvement. So he is a guru, I guess, in terms of Technology One, and all the other systems, SharePoint falls into his realm as well, that we rely so heavily on. So thank you very much for your 5 years.
Highly organised.
That is all complete. The certificates were under each one. I'd also like to ask that Susan Philpott comes forward. Susan is a volunteer and an employee at the Ashburton Museum, and has been doing sort of, I guess, that joint role for 5 years service to council. And she works on the weekend shifts and also on Wednesdays. So thank you very much for your time, and really great to see you here today. We've also got Anne Smith sitting in the back seat, and I'd like you to come forward. Anne originally worked at ACL, and then she came over into our utilities team and was the technical support officer. In 2019, she transferred jobs into our commercial property team and is our property officer. So yes, please come forward. She's also a nominee and one of our mental health mates, which is a new initiative that we introduced last year. So I'd like to say thank you very much for that also.
Do you want the wine in the picture?
And last but no means least, I have got one more person I'd like to recognise, and that is Tony Durham. Tony has got 5 years service today, and if you add a little break in time and 4 years previous service, she's almost up to 9. So Tony rejoined ADC after having a family, and in our research and monitoring advisors role, and in 2018 became the strategy and policy manager. So you see her face around a lot of the time, key part of the role being here at meetings. But yeah, look, thank you very much for everything you do, and please come forward.
A rose between two courses.
Yeah.
It's all done. Yeah, I think we will. Well, thanks for that, Sarah, recognising our staff and the wonderful jobs they do for us. and welcome Richard as well for the job you're going to do for us. Well, you're getting into it, and I think you've hit the ground running too, and stuff we need done, which you're doing, which is really great. Councillors, we'll break for a cup of tea now, and we'll head in there and we're back to social distancing, or not. We're all in together again, so we can, talk more closely and be in the same room, which we're getting back to normal, which is good. So we'll head in there, have a cup of tea, and we'll come back in about 15, 20 minutes. I think we're making good. Oh, and we will welcome the staff in as well. Yep. Come and have a chat and meet the councillors. Well, welcome back, everybody, after a cup of tea break. Item number 21, offer to acquire the Ealing Hall. And we have Tanya here who can give us some guidance. Any questions? Someone like to move?
I'd be happy to move it, but the comment I'd make after, 3 years we've been working on this or more, and I think it's a great solution for that district. And it's a lovely hall. There's a lot of love and care gone into it, and it's in a good strategic place for emergencies. And now that with that paddock across the road, they'll be able to use the funds for that and put it into the hall. And I just think it's great. The only thing they want down there, they say to me, is a light on the pole outside the fire station. So I'd like to move that motion.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Wilson.
Yes, I'll second that. The Ealing Hall has got a lot of history. The Ealing Ball used to be the highlight of the social year many years ago.
Oh dear.
So much pleasure in second.
Moved and seconded. Just have one question, page 175 on the letter. And the date of the special meeting says the 30th of the 9th, 2020, but we haven't got there yet.
Through Mr Mayor, 30th of August 2020.
August, right. 30th of the 8th. Okay. Oh, it might be a wee typo there, is it?
No, it does say
9th, is it? Yep, that's right. Clarification. Thanks. No further debate. I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Tanya. And item number 22, Reserve and Hall Boards Triennial Meetings. That must be you, Claire. And the recommendation there that we receive the report and approves the appointment submitted by Ealing, Ruapuna and Chertsey Reserve Boards. Noting here there's 2 to go for their triennial meetings.
There is now 1 to go. I have found out that High Bank, that I'm just working on at the moment, would like to have theirs just before the election, so slightly out of the date range that they should have had their triennial meeting. So I'm just working through the members on the High Bank Reserve now, and we'll put that to council through the next meeting. So Westerfield, Lagmore Hall will be the last one.
Right. It'll be great you get a 100% success rate. I don't know if it's ever been achieved before. Angus.
Mr Mayor, I'll move the recommendation, if I may.
Yep.
I'll second that.
Yep.
Mr Mayor.
Seconded, Roger. Yep.
Oh.
Dick Carroll.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to thank all the volunteers that are taking part in the committees that are being appointed today to look after the reserve boards and the halls, etc. I would also like to say that I attended, along with other councillors, a workshop the other day here in the chamber, and I thought it was very well run, and the people that were the volunteers actually enjoyed what council can now do for them and offer them a better service. So I think we've upped our game. I think it has to be recognised and is being recognised, in not yet in the wider community, and I hope it will be, but it's certainly been recognised around the boards and reserve boards, halls, and that we have upped our game, and I think it's a good move. I hope everyone votes for this recommendation.
Thank you. Any further speakers? If not, no right of reply required. I'll put the motion on in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Item number 23. Thanks, Claire. And Ashburton Timwell Connectivity Business Case. Page 181. believe this is actually on there, I think, somewhere. I've seen it before. That's all right. Oh, it's hard to see on that one, that's what it was. Yep. So, Brian or Neil, do you want to add anything to the report or just take questions, or what would you like?
Nothing more to report than what's actually in the document at this stage. It's basically the first stage of a three-stage process to get a detailed business case to NZTA regarding the connectivity issues between Tynwald and Ashburton. It is in line with the new government policy statement. So in the past, where we've been emphasising the economics and trying to get the second urban bridge to stand up on that basis, this is more on the well-beings that the government has brought forward, and as such we're looking at safety, the connectivity between Tynwald and most of the essential services, social services, etc., that the people would generally interact with that are on the northern side rather than the southern side of the bridge. So that's the emphasis that we're taking, and as I say, we're following the government policy statement now, and this is the direction we're heading in, and we're wanting to see whether it stacks up, and we're doing it in three stages so that we don't spend a lot of money and time doing things that will just get thrown out.
For the PGF funding, they asked for a business case to be done. What you've done so far is
the first stage of that business case.
Oh, there's more stages to go, or they just want the first stage?
Well, as is on here at this stage, what we're doing is just running it past NZTA at various steps along the way to make certain that it stacks up and it's worth going that next stage at this point in time in history.
Yep. So what stage does it go to the PGF to get their funding or not? Because it's probably reliant on them contributing for the bridge.
Well, I think you're a little bit ahead of the game in that sense. At this point, we have got funding to do what we're doing from the PGF. We've received, I think it's in the vicinity of 94,000 from them, out of a total of 307,000 that we've got lined up for this particular detailed business case. Now, if this stacks up, then we've got to go through the whole business of trying to get what it funded from that point on.
Could we put an application into the PGF for about 8 million, I think it was, for the 20% of the bridge build? Because NZTA were doing some, council was putting some in, and there was a gap of about 20% had to come from elsewhere, and the application went into the PGF for that.
My understanding is that if that's gone into the Provincial Growth Fund, we haven't heard any result of that.
No, they asked for a business case to be done.
They've asked for a business case to go forward, of which they've agreed to fund at this particular point in time.
That's right. I think you're both right. When we've completed the business case, i.e. stage 3, then that triggers the application to the PGF for the funding that's not met by NZTA or ourselves.
So that's just a couple of weeks away?
Oh, well, that'd be a fair question to ask.
How far away is it for that?
I would suggest that we were a good 6 months, if not more, away from that point at this stage.
I'd suggest we wouldn't have a PGF fund by then, but that's right. Councillor Cameron.
Thanks, Mr Chair. I have a few questions, if I may, please. I've read the report, and I doubt anybody would dispute anything, and the findings of the report all was good. I have some questions. The 90, with regards to what Neil was talking about, the 94,000, is that just for the stage 1?
No, it's for the first 2 stages effectively, and if required for the 3rd stage, we may have enough in that, but I don't think so.
So we're going to do, we've done stage 1 already, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So then we're moving on to stage 2 as of now, essentially?
If we get the approval of NZTA. What we're looking for at this stage is approval from yourselves to submit this first stage to NZTA to see whether they agree that the process is worth going to the next stage.
So NZTA make the decision?
Well, they are the long-term funding body that we're looking for the majority of the funding from. So yes, they would be making that decision.
So you mentioned to Neil that it could take 6 months to get to into stage 3 when the report goes through. What is needed to speed it up? More money, presumably, or more people, or?
No. We've done the first stages or so, and that required a business case, or not a business case, but a workshop with various participants to understand what the problems may be, etc. Now, we've got to readdress that yet again in stage 2 and go into a little bit more depth and finalise the fact that, hey, yes, we are looking as part of this connectivity problem for a second bridge. All right, so that's got to firm that up. Once we've got that firmed up and everything looks as if it's still on track, then the next stage is to look at the actual site, do the ground testing, do the survey work, do all that sort of stuff so that we can firm up on actual amount of money required to build a bridge at that spot. And that's why I say it will take a little bit of time to organise those contractors to come in, to be like Macmillan's over on the site, do tests at the site, come up with the results, give the results back to Stantec to analyse them, put up a design, come up with costings, etc. That's why I say it's going to take that length of time.
Thank you.
Councillor Latham.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I see at Part B of the case, we'll review and identify any possible new options, assess these options, and a shortlist to be evaluated at a multi-criteria analysis workshop. What's a multi-criteria analysis workshop and who's likely to be on it?
It's pretty much the same workshop type of event that we've had already, which is the logical mapping exercise in the first instance. It's just the next stage. It's putting all the possible options on the desk, working out which ones might be the best ones to try and go with, and then determining at the multi-criterion analysis workshop which one is the most preferred.
Could I have a supplementary, Mr.
Yep,
to Mayor? You mentioned the next stage would be perhaps to go and do some ground reports and whatnot at the approved site. And if the ground reports show that it's not possible to build a bridge there, what do we do? Where do we go then? I know we've got to take it in stages, but I'm a wee bit uncomfortable that it's just a little vague.
The likelihood of it being unsuitable is not very high. We've already been in with our sewerage pipeline going through there, so we've got a reasonable understanding of what the conditions are like. I would imagine that modern technology being what it will, we should be able to build a bridge on that particular site.
Yeah, those tests will just inform the designers on the appropriate design.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I think I've got it correct. We're going to send the business case so far to NZTA, and if they say they accept it, we continue on with stage 2. So that's why it takes a while. We're not thinking about digging and geophysics yet. We have to go through 2 stages, really. Yes. And I agree, the Provincial Growth Fund, I can't see it continuing into the new political situation after November. So it'll be purely up to NZTA to say or no. If they won't give us the 51 or perhaps the 80% that we're asking, they might come back to us and say it could be 50-50 and we'll have to make that decision. But I can see exactly why it takes 6 months, because we've done stage 1, we've got to do stage 2 past NZTA before we even consider stage 3. I think I've got the idea right. That's correct.
That's great, yes.
Hamish?
I just, by way of explanation, Council's current position is that the Chalmers Ave site is our preferred site, and our current position is that Council will pay 20% of the cost. So this work is to, with NZTA, is critically important for their 51%, as per our FAR rate on all our roads. And if they agree that they would contribute 51%, then Council is then in the position of either contributing 20 and finding the other 29 from somewhere, which is where the PGF was sort of in our sights, finding an alternative to the PGF if it no longer exists, or considering whether the 20% only contribution is the right policy position. So NZTA aren't going to be the other 80%. They will be 51 if it passes the case. Is that right, Neil?
It could be at least 51%. It could be higher.
Okay.
Yeah. There's nothing to stop them on certain projects. NZTA do provide more than the FAR rate.
Okay, that's good to know. But that's why we keep mentioning the PGF. It was to fill any funding gap between our 20 and whatever NZTA contributes to this project. That'll be the gap that we have to contemplate if it gets to that point.
I see them having no choice but to fund it, because in the report it talks about 1,200 vehicles per hour as capacity.
That's right.
We're over that now. So if we do nothing, their bridge gets busier and busier by us doing nothing. They need to be a partner in this. They have no choice. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. And through the chair, so I'm looking at financial implications on top of page 185. So you've got the costs there for stages 1 and 2, and then you've got that there's a budget in the LTP of 307,590. Does that include the 94,000 from the PGF, and I think there's 157,000 from NZTA as well? So is that all included in that going forward?
The total amount of money that we have for this particular stage, which is the detailed business case, is the 307,000, of which 94 is coming from the Provincial Growth Fund.
Yep.
The remaining, or 51% of that 307 was from NZTA, and the remainder was from Council.
Okay.
Councillor Lovett.
I was just going to ask, if we get approval from each of these stages going forward, how long are we looking at before we can actually drive over a bridge in Tynwald? Are we looking at 10 years away, or 5 years, or where?
You'll see it, I won't.
That is pretty much in the lap of the gods at this stage, but originally we were looking at 26, 27 as the construction time. That was back in 2008 when this whole process started. The traffic volumes have increased greater than what was originally anticipated. So I would like to think that if everything goes to plan, we could start a little bit earlier than that time frame. But as I said, it's still in the lap of the gods.
Yeah, I just getting worried because, I mean, that bridge is getting overloaded now. In the meantime, is there a contingency there to be able to get some money to widen that cycleway, walkway? Because I can actually see people are going to have, from Tynwald, are going to have to start biking to work or using scooters over that bridge. And I was looking this morning at people trying to walk and cycle on one side, and there's just no room.
I know there has been projects put up in the past and possibly still being thought about in the future to widen or put on clip-ons on the State Highway Bridge. My concern is if we go ahead with those, it may delay any work that we have on a second connectivity.
Councillor Cameron.
Just a quick comment and a question. The bridge, it may delay. I take your point, but at the moment it's unsafe and it's also blimmin' scruffy. And it needs, I mean, I know that's NZTA one side and we have the other, but it needs a spruce up. But at the moment I hear people coming from, you know, Terrace View or whatever on scooters have to wait at the end for one person to finish before the other one can start. Now that's not respectful for our ratepayers in our town, and that needs sorting now. And jolly NZTA can jolly well sort it, or something. They need to be put on notice. And also, my next question is, what is the ballpark figure for fixing the new bridge? Was it 300? Did I make up 300 million, or did someone
35.
mention that? Or
35 million.
35 million to build the new bridge. Oh well, it doesn't seem.
Noting that it hasn't been designed and fully costed.
But around that area, yeah.
Further questions, councillors? We do have a recommendation in front of us. So we'd like to move.
I'll move that recommendation that we approve the strategic case and support it being forwarded for review and approval by Waka Kotahi New Zealand Transport Agency.
Second that. Councillor Cameron. Open for debate. Being none, I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, gentlemen. Item number 24, Ashton Beach Enhancement Project. Welcome, Bert, Sarah.
Through the chair, thank you. This is a report to update elected members as promised. We got the direction from elected members to proceed with the project to this point without any sort of financial funding. Going forward, we need this financial funding to undertake the resource consent process and all the associated lizard management steps that we have to do under the Wildlife Act. So this is kind of where the rubber hits the road, and yeah, we need your direction and your generosity.
So you talked dollars last time we talked. These are the same dollars? There's no difference, no change?
They're the same dollars. What has changed is in terms of we've got a carry forward in terms of the project management costs that came out of my budget that was approved through ARF, so that's reduced off the balance. We've also got some capacity within the open biodiversity budget in the 2021, so again that's reduced off the balance. We didn't anticipate that would be available, so that's how we've ended up down to the 27,000. Where we intend, if possible, to take that money from is the Rural Beautification Reserve, and that's got over 200,000 sitting in it. So that's where we hope we can do. We can take that. And the other thing that we did promise to do, and we have commenced, is try and find external funding sources. It is a bit of a challenge being A council, and B, the costs that we've got ahead of us, at least in the short term, administrative costs such as resource consent, and grant funders do not like paying for that. They like paying for the actual product, and the Lotteries Commission are willing, in terms of their eligibility for like the lizard habitat, that they're prepared to put money into that, but they wouldn't do the resource consent to then get to the next step of building the lizard habitat. So yeah, we're kind of stymied if we don't get this initial money to move forward.
Councillor Mackay.
I'll ask the straight question, but I actually got a comment. How much will the resource consent cost us? Is it a small part of the 27,000, or is it the whole lot? Or and what consents are required?
Through the chair, the cost of the resource consent's a little unknown. We know what the deposit will be, but we're not sure. It's really up to the planning department to confirm whether they'll do that as a notified or non-notified consent, which will have an implication on the costs. This is our best guess at the costs around that. We've included it in the $10,000 for the wildlife permit as well.
What consents are required?
It would be a resource consent from this council.
For?
It's possible that there'll be an exceedance of noise limits. I think recreational activity in the rural zone requires resource consent. a land use change, yeah. And there's also an Indigenous vegetation clearance rule which may also be triggered with the construction of the motorcycle tracks. So it could trigger a few rules in the district plan.
Try to make something simple, something hard. Just have one question. It's on the report, number 6. It talks about, there's a concern there about riding a bike on the beachfront. And ECAN staff requested that council introduce a bylaw prohibiting the use of motorcycles on the beach foreshore. It's just a suggestion, or it's something that's just done. It's just going too far, I think.
Through the chair, that was a suggestion from ECAN. It was one that was not sort of supported by ADC staff unless it was the absolute last resort. We'd like to see more education and signage and try those avenues before we even go down that route.
Yep, good. Questions, comments, move motions?
I was going to make a comment. I was down at the beach on Sunday and was really impressed. It doesn't look like a wild wilderness. It's very tidy, and there's a great area in there fenced off in the middle for the bikes and people to play, and I was actually came away quite impressed. So, you know, and I'm actually, you know, in favour of what we're doing here, and I would like to support the motion. And
we haven't got a mover yet. We haven't got a mover yet.
I'll move it.
Okay.
Yes, I'm quite happy to move it.
Seconder, if you've finished speaking, we have a seconder. Councillor Latham.
Oh, I had a question actually.
Okay, I'll get a seconder. I'll come back to you unless you want to second it.
Yeah, I'll second it. Yeah.
Okay, and your question.
Yeah, the question was, there will be some health and safety matters there because it's on council land. Am I correct, or am I backing up the wrong tree? So, are we adequately sourced, insured, whatever, to make sure that we can mitigate those risks?
Through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely. In terms of health and safety risk, there is motorbike riding in itself is inherently dangerous, and also doing it on a formed track. However, by partnering up with the motorbike club, which is the intention and how we see this project going forward, it's using their expertise in terms of track formation, the design of the track, and also the safety rules involved. The entranceway in, for example, will be narrow so that it is bikes only that are able to enter into this area. There'll be signage along the way of responsibility of riders, and with things like this, it doesn't trigger the Health and Safety at Work Act because it's not, unless we're actually physically working in that area, and if we were working in that area, we'd be closing it to public. So it's more about the duty of care and the steps that we have to undertake. So by doing the things that I mentioned previously, we are meeting those requirements, and even the steps we've already done to date of excluding people from riding in really dangerous areas is again meeting those steps. So could there be accidents? Yes, there could. Can't guarantee there won't be, but are we taking the necessary steps to ensure that the risks are mitigated? Yes, we absolutely will be.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Mackay.
Mr. Mayor and councillors, I will be supporting it, but boy, to get a consent to improve something or return it to its natural state is almost beyond belief.
Obviously, it'll be looked at closely now you've raised it. No further speakers for the motion. I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Item number 25, page 193. Oh, clear. If you come for grants and funding 2021. We have the sheets with the funding on. Any questions? Angus.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move. I'll actually move 1 and then 1.1 and 1.2 all together in the hope that it's passed as one lot. Everything is explained very well in the report.
Seconder, Councillor Latham. Open for discussion. There being none, I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Please carried. Thank you, Claire. Well done. Now, item number 26, the Mayor's report. There's a couple of matters in there. Item 1, Mayoral Forum agendas. At the moment, you don't get the Mayoral Forum agendas, but if you would, at the Mayoral Forum, some councillors thought that they, not that they go to the Mayoral Forum, but mayors give them the agendas to see what's happening at Mayoral Forum. If you want them, you can have them if you want. You want to see what you've done? Yep. Okay. We'll see that they go to you. Councillor Mackay.
Mr Mayor, the Mayoral Forum, does it still run how it did a few years ago, where it's not actually a function or a formality of the Local Government Act?
I couldn't answer that because I've only been for coming up a year. I don't know how it ran before.
And my understanding is that it's not like a council. It's not part of the Local Government Act to have a Mayoral Forum. Mr Chief Executive.
I'll need to check absolutely. I thought there was reference in the Local Government Act to Mayoral Fora. They don't have any decision-making authority, however, so they are about joining together for mutual benefit by agreement.
Thank you for that, Mr Chief Executive. I think it's actually important, Mr Mayor, that the Mayoral Forum operates in a discussion mode, because it gives it actually more power by total consensus to actually work for the benefit of Canterbury. And I certainly wouldn't want to go to the Mayoral Forum, because I could perhaps interrupt discussions that may take place from time to time, and because they're held, or used to be held, in a nature that was confidential until released and that sort of thing, I think it's very important. If we had had a formal process at the Mayoral Forum, I doubt the Canterbury Water Management Strategy would have ever been done.
Yep.
I'll just leave it at that. So I think we just stay as we are.
Yep. Councillors won't be attending the Mayoral Forum. What this is suggesting is, or asking you, is do you want the agendas?
I don't actually think it would be beneficial for them to get an agenda. No.
Right. Do you want to vote on it? Whether you should or you shouldn't? Right. They don't want it? Okay, well, those who want it, ask me for it and we'll have it forwarded to you. You can if you want. There's nothing top secret in it really, but yeah. Okay. Some recommendation in the one on page 198 that Council appoints Deputy Mayor's proxy to vote on the Council's behalf at RDR Management Limited AGM on the 6th of October with the Chief Executive as the alternative representative. Move it.
I'll move that.
Councillor Wilson. Against it. In the debate, put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Another recommendation that Council appoints Deputy Mayor as Council's representative on the RDR ML Remuneration Committee. Would you like to move?
Yes.
Councillor Mackay. Councillor Wilson.
I'd rather not.
Okay, you, Councillor Cameron. Conflict, yeah. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. It's carried. Thank you. One more thing for decision there, item number 9. National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity. Had a letter from Jenny Hui, is it? ECAN's chairman, asking for a councillor to be appointed as council representative on the Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy Group. And Hamish has been telling us there's a new NPS coming next year, which is going to have biodiversity type things on it. So this is feeding into that.
I move Councillor Lovett.
Councillor Lovett. Seconder?
I'll second that.
No further nominations. Councillor, actually, we didn't have the recommendation. Moved and seconded. Put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Gets carried. Thank you, Lynette, and you'll get some information as time flows on. That's good. Just in my Mayor's report, number 7, Burnham Military Camp, and I was privileged to be the patron of their course of limited service volunteers, and they get a group of what do they call them, young people who are not in work or could be heading off the rails a wee bit, and they go to Burnham, or they do it all over the country in the military camps, but Burnham has a course and they have 4 every year, and they asked me to be patron of the one course, so I did that. It was very enlightening and very humbling to do it, and to meet these young people when they hop off the bus, bushy-tailed and hairy and thinking they run the world, and then see them 6 weeks or through the course and see them at the end of them well-disciplined young people who show respect is a great achievement, and they turn their lives around. They teach them lots of stuff that schools probably should have taught them, or their parents should have taught them: cooking, cleaning, how to look after money, ironing, washing. They do all those things, and talking to them, they really appreciate it, and they get some direction in their lives, and they get jobs at the end of it. They help them with jobs as well, and it's a very good course that they're on, and what they do. They started off with about 80 odd on this course, and there's about 55 who finished. Some don't fit for various reasons. Not some just have to go home, and some don't fit the bill, or they get sickness or something. But the 55 that were left were pretty impressive. And on the last day, when they were getting all these certificates, they, as being the patron of the course, you get to distribute those certificates to them, and then they do a haka for the patron. And if you ever have one of those done for you, it's something that gets you right in the middle. So they will be having more courses. They run them all the time. So I've sent a letter off saying that if we could be, someone from the council could be a patron in the future, we would be open for that. So next year, one of you may want to do it, or we may have some staff who want to do it as well. It doesn't take up a lot of time, but there's a wee commitment there, and watching these people grow is immense. Stuart.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, did you have to do any part of it at all? Did they give you a day of training, or?
There was one day where they were doing the high ropes course. I was invited to go and watch them. Could attend if you wanted, but that day it rained and they cancelled it for that day, and my diary didn't allow me to go back the day they did it. So, but they also have another day which they call the longest day. They start about 5 in the morning, go to 11 at night, and it's training and running and all sorts of things. They work them hard. They start at 5 in the morning, they finish at 10 at night. And it's discipline all the way through. But talking to them afterwards, they really respect what they've gone through. 2 people from Ashburton were on the course. They met both of them, and yeah, it's really good. So I thought I'd just mention that with you. Anything else councillors want to raise from the Mayor report? Councillor McMillan?
No, nothing to raise. I was going to move the report if there's nothing else.
And I'll second the Mayor's report. We'll receive the Mayor's report. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. Thank you. We've done that. We've done the biodiversity. We've done all that. We are up to business transaction. We're going to go into open meeting. We are an open meeting. We're going to move into committee. That's where we're up to. I'll move. We move into committee. Second up. Councillor Wilson. All in favour, please say aye. Carried.